They had everything: billions, power, influence that could move markets, and then, in less than a year, it was gone. What you're about to understand isn't just how they fell, it's why everyone who watched them saw it coming, except them. Because the collapse never starts when the money disappears. It starts the moment they stop believing they could ever lose it. Most billionaire collapses follow a pattern so predictable it's almost tragic. It begins with someone who genuinely believed they were building something meaningful. They worked harder than everyone around them, sacrificed more, took risks that would have destroyed people with less conviction or less luck. And when the world finally noticed, when the money started flowing and the validation arrived, something inside them quietly began to change. The first billion doesn't just change your bank account, it changes how you see reality. Every decision you made suddenly feels validated retroactively. The people who used to challenge you get replaced by people who agree with you. The word no starts to disappear from conversations. And here's what nobody tells you about that moment. The isolation doesn't feel like isolation when you're surrounded by people constantly. You start believing your own press releases. The narrative you created for investors becomes the truth you tell yourself before sleeping each night. Every quarterly report that exceeds expectations reinforces it. You're not just lucky, you're not just smart, you've discovered something others can't see. The empire expands. New markets, new products, new acquisitions. The machine you built starts requiring constant feeding to stay alive. There's a specific moment that happens in almost every collapse story. Small, forgettable. A senior executive tries to deliver bad news honestly. Maybe it's about customer retention dropping. Maybe it's about a product launch that quietly failed. Information that contradicts the momentum narrative. And the billionaire responds not with curiosity, but with dismissal. Not because they're cruel, but because accepting it would mean questioning everything. That executive learns, the organization learns. Bad news doesn't disappear, it just stops traveling upward until it's too late to matter. So the expansion accelerates. New offices in 12 countries, strategic partnerships announced monthly. Every move designed to prove the doubters wrong. The lifestyle becomes part of the brand. Private islands, charity galas, appearances on talk shows where they explain their philosophy of success. Each acquisition makes perfect sense in isolation. Each investment aligns with the vision, but together they're building something too complex to understand. The original business, the thing that actually generated profit, starts getting less attention than the new ventures that promise exponential growth. Revenue grows, headlines celebrate, stock price climbs, but underneath the foundation is quietly becoming Swiss cheese. Nobody's watching the original structure. Debt leverages more debt, growth funds growth. The entire empire starts operating on the assumption that momentum itself is a business strategy. There was a version of them that would have seen this coming. The version that started with nothing and understood exactly how fragile everything is. That person knew what it felt like when rent was uncertain, when one bad quarter meant personal bankruptcy, when fear kept decisions honest. But success doesn't just add resources. It subtracts the very constraints that made you careful, the hunger that made you creative when nothing else would. The team that built the company gets replaced by the team that scales it. Different skills, different values, different relationship with risk and truth. And somewhere in that transition, the person who climbed the mountain becomes someone who genuinely believes they can fly. Physics hasn't changed, though. They're working just as hard, maybe harder. But the work has shifted from building something real to maintaining the illusion of inevitability. The first real crack shows up in the quarterly numbers. Not catastrophic, just concerning. The kind of thing that could be explained away easily. And that explanation becomes the template. Next quarter, different problem, same explanation structure. we're investing in future growth. Short-term pain for long-term gain. The language shifts from "we're profitable" to "we're prioritizing growth," from sustainable to disruptive, from truth to terminology that obscures it completely. Market analysts start asking questions. Journalists start digging. Former employees start talking anonymously to reporters about what they saw from the inside. And here's where it accelerates. Because the response to scrutiny isn't transparency, it's lawyers, PR firms, aggressive defense of a narrative nobody believes anymore. The stock starts sliding, not crashing yet, just eroding. And every attempt to stop it with announcements and optimism just makes the descent steeper. This is the part where most people think they understand the story. But what happens in the next 3 minutes changes everything you assume. The cascade happens faster than anyone predicted. Vendors demand cash up front. Banks that were eager to lend suddenly want their money back immediately. Divisions get shut down. Offices close. Employees who believed in the mission find out through company-wide emails sent at midnight on Fridays. And the billionaire is still fighting, still believing a single announcement, one more partnership, some final miracle will restore what's been lost irretrievably. But it's not about the business anymore. Regulators are investigating, lawsuits are being filed, everything they built is becoming evidence in multiple cases. The story changes from visionary founder to cautionary tale in less than 90 days. The same journalists who wrote puff pieces now compete for exposés. Assets get liquidated. The yacht, the collection of whatever they collected. Things purchased to signal success, now sold to pay lawyers and settlements. And somewhere in this collapse, there's a moment of clarity, usually alone, usually late at night, when the defenses finally break down completely. They see it finally. Not the market, not the competition, not the economy. The decisions they made when they stopped listening to anyone who disagreed. The moment they chose growth over sustainability, narrative over numbers, the exact meeting where they fired the person who told them the truth too clearly. There was a day, unremarkable at the time, when they could have chosen differently, scaled back, listened, admitted uncertainty instead of projecting invincibility. But that choice required something they'd lost access to. The ability to imagine themselves as anything other than the person the world was celebrating. Some of them rebuild, different ventures, smaller ambitions, carrying the knowledge that success and wisdom aren't the same thing and one doesn't guarantee the other. Some become cautionary tales professionally, speaking about what they learned, turning the collapse into a different kind of currency, one that trades on humility. Some never recover. Not financially, that's just money. But psychologically, the identity built on being exceptional can't survive evidence that you're fallibly, catastrophically human. And the world moves on remarkably quickly. The empire that seemed too big to fail gets replaced in headlines by someone else's empire. Another billionaire rises, supremely confident they've learned from predecessors' mistakes, that they're different, that their vision is clearer and their foundation more solid. And maybe they are different. Or maybe the pattern is so consistent because the variables that create collapse are built into the structure of extreme success. The isolation, the insulation from dissent, the belief that the rules that apply to others don't apply to you, not because you're arrogant necessarily, but because when you're proven right 1,000 times, it becomes genuinely impossible to imagine being catastrophically wrong the 1,001st time. That's what nobody talks about. The collapse isn't usually fraud, it's not usually malice, it's the predictable endpoint of success that removes its own safeguards. Every billion gained is also a billion reasons why the people around you stop telling you when you're wrong, and you stop hearing it. So when you see the next collapse, the next impossible fall, Remember, it started long before the money disappeared or the headlines turned vicious. It started the moment they became too successful to fail, which is also, paradoxically, the exact moment when failure became inevitable and inescapable. That's the truth no one talks about. Not because it's secret, but because believing it might mean building something smaller than your ambition allows.